It's often requested over the past couple years for me to review the HSU Research CCB-8. This is a coaxial speaker and a pretty large one. This was loaned to me to review by Alan, who is a viewer. So thanks, Alan, and everybody, please take a minute to give Alan a thank you in the comment section below. Retail price on these is about $390 each. That's US dollars. This uses an 8-inch coaxial speaker. Frequency response is spec'd from 50 Hz to 20 kHz, plus or minus 2 dB at 15 degrees off axis. Sensitivity is rated at 94 decibels in half space, which keep that in mind. Recommended amp power from the manufacturer is 10 to 400 watts. Enclosure type is vented. Impedance is 8 ohm. And one of the claims to fame with this speaker is that they say it has constant directivity horn coaxial speaker. Point source ensures no lobing effects because you're always the same distance from the woofer and tweeter. True constant directivity circular horn allows for smooth musical off-axis response regardless of whether you're vertically, horizontally, or even diagonally off-axis. Interesting. So the way I set these speakers up initially was pointed directly at me, and that's generally how I start off my listening sessions. Speakers were about 2 feet off the wall behind the speakers, and they were in vented mode, so I didn't stuff the ports on the back of the speaker. With the speakers pointed directly at me, it was bad. It was really bad. So initially I thought, hey man, the mid-range on these sounds good. The bass is actually good. And that held true throughout the duration of my listening. The mid-range and the bass is actually, like, I got no problems with it. But the highs were really all over the place. So, knowing what I know about coaxial designs, they typically benefit from being faced away from the listener by some angle, right? Most of the time, 10 to 15 degrees is kind of the sweet spot. And the reason for that is symmetry. So coaxial designs, everything is symmetrical in the cabinet. It's dead in the center of the cabinet. So any kind of edge diffraction you're going to get from the cabinet itself, or even from the drive unit itself, is going to create some peaks and dips directly on axis. So with that knowledge in mind, I take the speaker and I turn it a little bit. Now, when I turn it a little bit, maybe 15 degrees off axis, I'm just kind of ballparking here. I thought, okay, well, it sounds like it's taken down the top end a little bit, but I still don't like the way this sounds. Then I tried turning it completely away from me, like parallel with the wall behind the speaker, facing straight out into the room at about 30 degrees off axis. If you keep the same 30-degree stereo triangle, the speakers will be facing directly out into the room. Again, it's bad. I thought, what the heck? So then I just grabbed my headphones. I put my headphones in, and I'm listening to some tracks. Okay, now I go back. I'm going to drop some different speakers in. In this case, it's the Asylab F6B. I put those Asylabs on the stands. I'm listening. Same output levels, like low 80s, upper 70s, just kind of in that ballpark. No problems. Put the HSU back on the stand. My ears started to hurt 3 minutes into my listening session. So I'm not trying to say any of this to be sensationalized. Anyway. It's just honestly the way I felt, and I don't like the speaker at all. When I'm listening to it, I'm listening for certain things. Do hand claps sound reasonable? Does the speaker kind of sound balanced overall, even if it's not perfect? Are there any hot spots in the response? But for me, the biggest issue was that it just seemed like there were certain frequencies where it was kind of dynamic, but then it just dropped like a rock right after that. And I don't mean dynamic in the sense of, as you turn the volume up, is the system able to keep up? I really mean it in terms of frequency response is doing something. You hear a sound out in nature, and then all of a sudden somebody says, all right, everything after this primary frequency is gone. You don't have that. Now, in terms of imaging, I didn't like it. And I think that has a lot to do with the characteristics of this speaker and how it's radiating sound out into the room. I did wind up setting some acoustic treatment panels on the first reflection in my living room. And these panels are about 2-inch thick rock wool. When I did that, it seemed like it shored up some of the imaging issues that I was having. And it also took some edge off of the upper mid-range that was very just too aggressive for my ears. So I would say that if you're going to use this speaker for home theater or music listening, you better make damn sure that you're running some acoustic treatment on the side panels. And I want to be very clear when I say this too. That is not always a given. Well-designed speakers with good even dispersion don't have to have acoustic treatment on the side panels. And in fact, you can actually make things sound worse because you lose some of the sense of envelopment from the sidewall reflections, because those actually add some sense of additional stereo width. Okay. Going back to the envelopment with this particular speaker, even though it was kind of where I want it to be in terms of radiation up through the mid range, it's just that it was so tonally unbalanced that I didn't care about that. I could not get past the fact that just the upper mid range sounded bad. Again, I'm going to go back to the lower mid range and the mid range area. So let's just say like below about 1 kilohertz or so. Okay. All that sounded great. Nice mid bass punch. I'd say extension in room to probably about 60 hertz or so. The sensitivity on the speakers is pretty legitimately high. And I think my measurements are going to show it's like 90 decibel sensitivity. When you go with higher sensitivity speakers, you're going to give up bass extension. When I saw that these were rated at 94 decibels, first of all, I thought, well, if that's real, there's going to be no bass below like probably 150 hertz for an 8-inch. My thinking was, yeah, if it's upper 80s, then it'll probably get down to, 80 hertz or so. So to see that this is around 90 decibel sensitivity, but it still gets down to about 60 or 70 hertz, that's impressive. So that's a win. But by and large, it's just a terrible speaker. I'll be honest with you. So let's do the sound clip and then we'll talk about the data. So now that you've heard what this speaker sounds like, let's look at the frequency response and you can see what you heard. We have an average sensitivity of about 90.4 decibels. F3 is at 65 hertz, F10 is at 52 hertz. So as I normally do, or I'm trying to do more of, is give you some ideas for adjusting the frequency response so you can get a more neutral sound. That way you don't have to deal with some of the very significant issues that this speaker has in terms of accuracy and tonal balance. So I came up with this via REW. And I let the program, REW, which is Room EQ Wizard, do its own thing for setting the equalization band. Sometimes I like to do it myself because I only want to do with just like maybe 1 or 2 bands tops. If it's more than maybe 3 bands, usually that's a speaker that I'm going to say it might not be worth your time. In this case, you can see REW came up with 9 bands of equalization to go from this green frequency response, which is what I showed you previously, to now the more tonal balanced orange response. And even still, it doesn't bring up this dip and it doesn't bring up this dip because this one is most likely diffraction. And this one seems like it's an issue in the crossover region. So you can't fix those things with EQ. Here's the CEA 2034 data set. And then I wanted to call out a couple things. I'm about to show you another form of singing in a second. These resonances. So you've got one around 600 hertz, one around 1.2 kilohertz, and then you've got just some crazy stuff going on in the high frequency. So now let's show you the burst decay. Here you go. HSU does say on their website a certain frequency bandwidth at plus or minus 15 degrees. So I wanted to show you that. I've got that measurement as well. If you do something similar to that, set it about 15 degrees out, you'll notice that the higher frequency comes down a little bit, but you still got this resonance and this resonance. Now, what are those going to sound like? We can look at the estimated interim response for a typical reflective room and then use this line to kind of give us an idea. And this really does a good job most of the time to sum up what I heard in my own listening room and what you're likely to hear in your listening room. So in-room extension down to about 60, 70 hertz in room. That's pretty good. Again, higher sensitivity speaker. We've got this resonance right here. You can hear this as forward, like the sound is coming out at you. This dip right here is going to sound like a lack of clarity or attack in the upper mid-range. Now, this one I didn't put a bullet to, but that is something I just saw in the Scilab F6B, and that's going to sound kind of cuppy, okay? And this one is about maybe 3 decibels high, so that one might be enough to be audible. And then if we go and look at, we got some high frequency bouncing going on around here. Are you going to hear these high frequency things? I don't know that you're going to hear one that necessarily jumps out at you, but for me, the biggest issue is this peak dip combo. If this speaker had just this peak, or if the speaker had just this dip, that would be one thing. But this peak dip, that's a swing of about 7 decibels. That's a lot. And you are absolutely going to hear coloration in the speaker because of this peak dip combo. Horizontal contour plot, about plus or minus 55 degrees wide. So that's pretty good, but then you get to the high frequency and it narrows up pretty quickly. Now, how do you resolve some of this? If you don't have equalization, you don't change the crossover, what do? Well, first of all, equalization isn't going to fix this because it's built into the crossover. So crossover is what you would really need to do. However, you can put acoustic absorption on the sidewalls to capture some of this extra energy that's being sent out into the room at about 50 degrees or so. So adding 2-inch acoustic absorption there will help catch some of this, but it's not going to solve it completely. Let's look at the vertical contour plot. This being a coaxial driver, typically you expect the vertical and the horizontal to pretty much behave the same way. And within some reason, you kind of do. Part of the reason that you don't see them behaving the exact same way is because the cabinet is not perfectly symmetrical in regards to width and height. So it's a little bit taller than it is wider. Distortion at 86% and then 96%. Now we look at multi-tone distortion, and that's when we start to run into some issues, okay? So at multi-tone distortion in around 1.5K, you've got some peaking going on here at higher SPL levels. And then you've got another bit of distortion, and this one's pretty high actually, going around 8K, 9K. Use a subwoofer across the speaker over 80 hertz. What changes? Well, not a whole lot. This peaking in distortion and this around 8K, they come down a little bit, but it's not significant. Short-term compression. Here we have the impedance. Minimum EPDR is 2 ohm. Minimum impedance is 4 ohm. So most of your standard 4 ohm capable amplifiers are really not going to have an issue with this speaker. There are some pretty obvious resonances. I don't know if these are port resonances or enclosure resonances, but either way, we see these, and these also show up in the frequency response. Now let's consider a comparison between the KEF Q1 Meta at $699 a pair and the Klipsch RP600M2 at $699 a pair as well. Now, the reason I chose these two to compare against the HSU, honestly, one of them should be obvious. The KEF is a coaxial speaker, and it's closely priced. For the Klipsch, I wanted to show you something that's considered a high sensitivity speaker, even though it's really not. It's kind of like in the mid-range of most bookshelf size speakers. But also wanted to kind of give you a different flavor of directivity in regards to the radiation of the speaker. So let's look through some of these real fast. This is the HSU frequency response you've already seen. Very nonlinear. And then if we go to the KEF Q1 Meta, not perfect in linearity. We've got a dip in the upper mid-range, but overall more linear than the HSU, but about 6 decibels lower in sensitivity. And its bass is going to be similar, but it's going to get about 10 hertz or so lower. Then if we go to the Klipsch is not linear, not as linear as the KEF in regards to overall linearity, but definitely more linear than the HSU. The Klipsch has this high frequency bump up here, or you can consider this to be a mid frequency dip. So this is going to sound more hollow and this is going to sound more bright. But the Klipsch will take better to equalization. F3 at 70 hertz and F10 at 41 hertz. So the speaker's going to get about as low as the HSU, but with some more depth to it because of the F10 being lower in frequency. The CEA for the HSU, and then the KEF, and then the Klipsch. And then let's look at the horizontal spread here. So we're looking at the HSU again. I've drawn some lines about plus or minus 55 to 60 degrees to kind of give you a guide marker. Then if we go to the KEF, you can see that the KEF in the mid-range isn't quite as smooth as it should be, but overall the dispersion seems to be more controlled, especially as you go up in the higher frequency. And then if we look at the Klipsch has really good control. There's some broadening right here around 3 to 4K or so, but this speaker is also more narrow. So this blue line right here shows me that -6 decibel point for the HSU. Well, now if I'm looking at that same blue line, that's above where the -6 dB point is for the Klipsch. So the Klipsch is about plus or minus 40 to 50 degrees, kind of in this ballpark. So it doesn't radiate as wide as the HSU. It's going to be a little bit more narrow, but it's also more well controlled. Estimated in-room response of the HSU. And then if we go to the KEF, so the KEF is more linear. In room, what you can expect is the KEF is going to sound more neutral overall. This area right here is a peak, and it's also going to sound maybe a little bit cuppy or maybe a little bit forward. You know, it's kind of depending on how you hear things. And then if we go to the Klipsch, what I'm noticing is that instead of having like a downward trending response, it's more flat. So this is due to a couple different things. First of all, if that mid-range dip did not exist on the Klipsch that we saw previously, In this region, well, this mid-range would be up here, right? Which means that this would be more linear through here, and then you'd have a more general sloped response. You still get up to the higher frequency, though, where there's some broadening of the sound around 3 to 4K, which we actually just saw in the horizontal contour plot right through here. So the klipsch is going to sound potentially a little bit hollow in room, maybe bright, maybe a touch sibilant, depending on how you're hearing things. And then let's look at compression again real fast for the HSU and then the KEF. So this is where the KEF does not do as well. In terms of linearity and dispersion, it definitely does better than the HSU. But in terms of output capability, it's not doing as well as the HSU, especially at the higher output levels. And then the klipsch. So the klipsch is kind of in between. The klipsch is holding its own. It's not quite as good. And then we're going to look at multi-tone distortion again for the HSU and then the KEF. And again, the KEF is higher in distortion than the HSU overall. And unfortunately, I wasn't running this test when I had the klipsch speaker in for review. This was years ago. So I don't have a multi-tone test. So really what I'm trying to show you here is there's a lot of different opportunities for you to get different sound out of different speakers. If you compare the HSU to the KEF coaxial, well, the KEF is way more linear. It's going to be more tonally balanced. The bass is going to be a little bit deeper, but it's not going to get quite as loud without having more distortion than the HSU. The klipsch is more narrow in terms of radiation. It's going to have its definite own sonic profile, but it's going to be linear within octaves. So the mid-range is going to be linear. The upper treble is also going to be linear, but for me, that upper treble is too much on the klipsch. And listen, that may be your thing, and that's fine. The thing about the KEF and the klipsch both is that you can use EQ, and you don't have to use a boatload of bands to do it. With the HSU, just to get somewhat flat response, never minding those two dips we talked about, around 2K and around 8K or so, you have to use 9 bands of EQ to bring some of those issues down. That's just a lot. And honestly, I don't think it's worth your time. So at the end of the day, my opinion of the HSU is probably just skip it. Frankly, I'm disappointed in the design. I was hoping for better. Who knows? Maybe there's something in the works. And, if that happens, maybe somebody will send me that one to review. Again, I want to thank Alan for loaning this out to me. And if you'd like to support me, you can do so one of two ways. You can join me at patreon.com, or you can use any of my generic affiliate links in the description section below. They're completely generic, so it doesn't matter what you buy. You just click an Amazon link or Crutchfield or Audio Advice link and go buy whatever it is that you're already planning on buying. That earns me a small commission, no additional cost to you. And that's mainly how I get income from doing these reviews. I don't take on sponsors or do anything like that, so I certainly appreciate the help when you can. I will talk to you later. Take care.